What's the funniest way you have f'd up a date? I didn't FK up the date. The date was just f'd. Met a girl at the local McDonald's after school one day when I was 15. We talked and then exchanged numbers. She asked if I'd go out with her the next day. I thought she was gorgeous, and when she said I should dress up I expected something special. She took me to her grandma's funeral. I flirted with a cute bank teller for weeks before working up the nerve to ask her out. Didn't realize she was super religious. Invited her to a Mexican restaurant and ordered 2 margaritas. When she told me she doesn't drink I said that's okay. These are both for me. She told me I wasn't Christian enough for her and I agreed. And there I sat, drinking 2 margaritas alone. We were sitting on my couch watching a movie and she moves closer and closer until she is on my lap. As a joke I start to tickle her and then she starts to tickle me back and then it turns into play wrestling. Right before things switch from play wrestling to making out, we both slip off of the couch and my reflexes kick in so I accidentally move in a way that puts her below me. She slams her head into the hardwood floor. She laughs it off but it killed the mood and we went back to watching the movie. I offered to pay for the bill. She insisted to pay half. Didn't fight it, but only had a large bill so I pocketed her money and put my bill in. Anyway, a long story short, I did the math wrong and stole $20 from her. She sarcastically said thank you and I thought she was being sincere. We were trying to decide where we wanted to eat and I suggested Panda Express. She hesitated before saying no. Then I suggested Asian buffet. Once again no. I got bold and said Benihana. She told me to take her home. She told me later she thought I was being racist because she was half Chinese. I didn't even notice. I only saw her black dad and assumed her mom was Hispanic or something. I ended up getting KFC. I went on a date with a girl I met in an online chat room to see King Kong at the cinema. I was in my young teens and the ending absolutely shattered me, even though I knew it was coming. I cried. Not a lot, but a couple tears. She noticed and asked incredulously if I was crying. I just nodded and without saying anything further she got up and left. Never returned any of my messages after that. My first Valentine's date in college, this guy asked me out to dinner but didn't drive, so when I picked him up, he said you're wearing jeans with a look of disdain. Then he told me we needed to go somewhere cheap because he couldn't contribute much to the meal. I ended up paying. So I guess I f***ed that date up by letting him get in my car. This girl's father had just recently passed away so I invited her over to make her dinner and console her. We make dinner and we are talking about stand-up comedians and she tells me she's never seen Louis C.K. So I say we need to watch one of his stand-ups. Well, I turn on one randomly and the first 25 minutes are dead dad/parent jokes. This was in high school. She invited me to her house to have dinner with her family, and I didn't know them very well yet. The conversation turned to names we thought were old-fashioned and ugly sounding. We all threw out a few like Gertrude, Bertha, and Eugene, and then I said something like, "At least that one's not as bad as Deborah." I used my ugly voice and everything. Her mom's name is Deborah. Her grandmother was also at the table with us. We've been married for almost 7 years. We were watching Suicide Squad. We're making out and I said wait, Batman's in this part, give me a second. It was more funny than anything. We order a small snack for our coffee and as it's arriving at the table he pulls out his Nokia phone. Trying to make a light-hearted joke I say, man, that has got to be the oldest phone I've seen in a while. I really dug it in, trying to break that friendly wall. Well, turns out it's not a Nokia. It was his insulin pump. I hit on the waitress. I didn't know it was a date. I just thought we were friends going out for dinner. My friends set us up, and they both thought it was a date. Neither of them has talked to me since then, which was around 2003. I'm not good with social cues. Never kissed a woman before. Date was going well. My charm was 10 out of 10. On the walk home she puts herself in a corner, pulls my tie and starts to French me. I respond by transferring all the spit from my mouth into hers at once. I wasn't ready for that level of kiss and she called me disgusting and stormed off. It's all good though. 2 weeks later I was transferring all of the spit from my mouth into her birthing caverns. Everything worked out. I drove a Volvo from the 60s. The fuel line and filter would get clogged occasionally. On a first date, I pick her up. As we're heading to dinner, the car dies. I pop the hood, knock out the crud in the filter and then have to suck on the fuel line to get it flowing again. I wasn't fast enough and end up with gasoline in my mouth and on my shirt. She was understanding, but needless to say she wasn't impressed with the Techron mouthwash/cologne. Got hit by a car walking to her apartment. I bounced off the windshield and was thrown across the intersection, probably because I was in shock, and in retrospect the driver was drunk. We didn't call the police. Instead, I limped to the girl's apartment. When she answered the door, she was dressed to the nines and ready for a big night, but I had to tell her I couldn't go out because I'd just been hit by a car and probably should go to the hospital. She looked at me like, now I've heard every excuse in the book. I never dated her again and now I'm pretty sure she's a lesbian. Basically I messed it up by having my dad drive us home. We had gotten to her doorstep and I had walked her there and I go in for that goodnight kiss and I landed and my dad shouts, "Let's fucking go dude, it's 10 p.m. I got in the car and didn't talk to my dad for a while after that. I was pretty mad. Not actually a date here. Last December I went to a party organized by a friend. There, I met a girl I had a crush on. Since I am very shy, I got drunk before trying to ask her out for once. I got so drunk that I forgot to do that. Luckily, in the end she asked me out. The dialogue was something along the lines of, "Hey, Alex_I see, it's been a while since I know you and I am really into you. Do you want to hang out me and you alone sometimes?" Oh yeah, I thought it'd be cool, but where the FK is, my friend, he has my damn weed. And then I walked away to find my weed. Never heard from her again. This is actually my brother's fucked up date. He asked a beautiful girl to the movies. They arrive a few minutes early. Instead of going in immediately, he leans up against his truck to chat with her a bit. He's telling her a story and casually spinning his keys around his finger, when he accidentally flings the keys into the bushes. They spend the next 30 minutes looking for his keys and they almost miss the movie. Second date, she invited me over for a home-cooked meal, fed me food and drinks, packed me leftovers and offered to let me stay the night. I didn't. Fucked it up big time. We still talked afterwards but it was never the same and we kind of moved on. I have volatile allergies. My nose may have started bleeding during a New Year's kiss with a beautiful girl I met that night. It may have gotten in her mouth by the time we noticed. And I guess she maybe ran to the bathroom and threw up. Please don't look at me. Not exactly a date, but I'm walking this girl I know to her house and it starts raining. Somehow the conversation takes a total 180 and she says I've never kissed a guy in the rain before. My dumb ass, not picking up this extremely obvious signal, responds with "Ha. Neither have I." Then said goodnight and went home. Months later, lying in bed one night, it finally hits me and I realize how retarded I am. Not me but this country I know started putting the month before the day, then the year. Now they get mad when you mention it. Called a girl named Rebecca Rachel multiple times. It wasn't in reference to anyone, she just looked like she'd be named Rachel. We're still friends, I still call her Rachel sometimes just to tick her off. I had a first date at a sushi restaurant/bar with a guy from OkCupid. He was hilarious and was making me laugh a lot, so it was going really well. I jokingly tried to tap his nose with my chopsticks, but Mies aimed and jammed them up his nose. Full of hot sauce. At least he could breathe well for the rest of the night. I once organized what I thought would be a really cool date to an authentic German food restaurant, with fancy German beer and everything. Turns out it was the first day of Oktoberfest. The place totally packed full of drunk Germans and there was a DJ playing some way too loud German something or another music. I didn't even know there was a German immigrant community where I live. My partner was not amused by this. I asked a cute girl out who worked at the grocery store near my place once for coffee. I wasn't even thinking, but I wore my Montreal Canadian sweater to the coffee shop and it turned out she was a huge Vancouver Canucks fan, which is understandable since I live in Vancouver. But I guess she took my superior team personally because I didn't see her again after that. During our coffee she also ranted about how much her and her dad loved the Vancouver Canucks, and couldn't understand why I didn't like them too. Not exactly a date, but there was a girl in my class I tried hitting on, and it turned out she was married. Then it turned out she didn't even realize I was hitting on her. Then she actually gave me advice on how to ask a girl out without sounding like an idiot. I was 16 and on a movie date. Went to do that move where you stretch your arms then put it back down around her shoulder. Instead I just elbowed her in the face. Apparently it was bad date etiquette to wear shorts and sandals to a first date. Mini golfing. When it was 95 degrees out. First date ever. I was 16 and as anxious as I've ever been. Everything I thought to say seemed stupid, so there was just long silences, which only made my anxiety worse. Finally, I thought to tell a joke to break the tension. Couples who break up and get back together are strange. Even crazier are married people who get divorced and then remarry. That's like waking up in the morning and saying, "Ew, this milk is sour. Maybe tomorrow it will be fresh." Then she said the most amazing thing I've heard in my whole life. I'm 37 now. You know, my parents got divorced and remarried. Not strictly a date, but I had been flirting with a girl in spin class for a week or so. We decided to race during one of the sprints and I managed to burst a blood vessel in my forehead and started bleeding all over my face. Turns out she had a pretty strong aversion to blood, which caused her to fall off the bike and stumble out of the class while throwing up on herself. We didn't see each other again after that. showed up. Apparently I wasn't as attractive in person even though she looked about 50 pounds heavier than her picture from online. Ate a piece of pot brownie thinking it would calm me. Hour later, nothing, so I finish it. Halfway through I went straight full retard. It was a mutual ghosting. I'm not the player type, but somehow I managed it to take my neighbor, girl, home with me. Was so drunk I was hungry and cooked rice and some sauce. The complete kitchen was covered in rice, because drunk, and I was cursing like a sailor. The girl wasn't even hungry and was waiting in my room, which looked like a homeless guy lived in there, was studying for an exam. So I started to eat some rice, felt sick and ran to the bathroom to puke out of my window. That must have been the thing that made her leave. Girls are weird. My friend took a girl to McDonald's Class C, and ordered food for himself, didn't even ask her if she was hungry. Then she was just watching him eat. There was that story which was told many times. She invited me up to her place, got us each a glass of wine and then took her pants off, at which point I assumed she was going to bed, said goodnight and left. After going to her place to cook her a meal, I made the huge mistake of going out on the balcony to smoke a cigarette. She gave me a long rant about the evils of smoking and I decided to cut my losses and leave. Ended up getting mugged at the nearby train station and having to creep back to her place and asked to stay on her sofa. Met a girl and chatted with her for far too long before actually meeting her in person. Got really comfortable, I guess. First date was late at night and we sat at a park and stared at the stars, all romantical and shit. I started talking about poop and pooping. Apparently could have kissed her that night, but I just wanted to talk about poop. Ended up marrying her though, so all in all it was pretty rad. I was in the Buzzin during a friend's party making out with a girl I was interested in. I started to get very hungry, and when other people went upstairs for food, I tried to go too. I stood up, but the girl pushed me back down and got on my lap. I then looked at her and said something along the lines of everybody else is going, come on, let's get something to eat. By the time I was done eating, I had to leave. I then texted her later that night and found out the reason why she wanted me to stay downstairs. I then realized I fucked up. TLDR, I got cucked by food. About to give first head, I start to slide from the bed towards the floor, I'm on my knees and proceed to fold my legs underneath me, gently kissing my way south. As I reach my final destination I fart, massively, loudly. Silent embarrassment and shame, laughter. No second date.